Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. So I'm Dr. Daniel Gelbart. I am the Director of Digital Technology at Smart Arches. And today I'm going to be talking about implementing digital workflow in implant practice. All right, so when we talk about a fully digital workflow, what we're going to be meaning is we're going to have no impressions, no more pouring models, no impression copings, no analogs, and altogether that's going to mean we have much less mess in the office and more organization. So comparing the digital workflow to traditional workflow, we're going to have lower material cost, less materials altogether, increased accuracy, reduced case time, and it's going to allow us to do same-day restorations, which is really important. So it all starts really with the intraoral scan, right? This digital impression is going to be the gateway of true digital dentistry. So there are a ton of intraoral scanners on the markets. New ones are coming out all the time. I don't have the time to get into each one specifically. Some of them excel in different areas, but generally they all work. And as of 2021, 53% of the dental offices in America are intraoral scanning, and a good amount are planning on getting there. And I think this trend will continue to increase. This is something that I was pretty surprised about because of the offices that are scanning, only 58% of those are using them for implant restorations. And hopefully with this information, maybe people can feel a little more comfortable with that. Okay, so once you have your digital impression, we have to get a design done. Okay, so we have a ton of different design services, CAD programs. This is by no means a comprehensive list. So, for a full purchase CAD program, right, exocad, 3Shape are going to be the major players. There's Blender, Dental Wings, those are some big ones. There's also pay per case CAD programs. Blue Sky has some interesting stuff. And there's also, design services. It does seem like new design services are popping up every week. Evident is one of the, very large ones that's based in Vancouver. I've used them many times and, with great results. Since I'm working in a full arch center and, doing same day provisionals, having, what I would call an in-house designer is, something that's a total game changer for me. And I have in-house in quotes because, since as long as they have electricity and the internet, they could be wherever they are. Okay. There are also, a whole bunch of free design services. These are some that, I've played around with and are really good, especially maybe in the beginning when you're first playing with CAD stuff. The Medit programs are really great and they're free. It doesn't matter if you have a Medit software or not, a Medit scanner. You take your intraoral scanner from any scanner and put it in there. All right, so, for many years, the only option we had for in-office restorations was milling and, 3D printing, which is going to be, a main focus of the lecture, has really exploded. So now we have, multiple options. All right, so, milling, we call this a subtractive technology. We're going from a disc or a block, and it's being cut down, right? So milling is a very reliable, time-tested process. The first CEREC was released for dental offices in 1987. So we got a long track record. There is significant material waste, right, from what's cut down or what's left in your disc or block. And not only is it cost prohibitive for many people to get into milling, the machines themselves, there's also the burrs are pretty expensive and they have to be replaced very often. Now, for most offices, it does seem like a few people here have some of the larger mills. Most offices, the mills are going to be limited to 1 to 3 unit restorations. I think that milling is going to obviously have a big place in dentistry for many years to come. But what this graph is showing is that there's not much of growth predicted in milling industry, lab, or dental office over the coming years. And that brings us to 3D printing, which is also known as additive manufacturing, because we're going from liquid resin that's being cured in very thin layers up into our final product. So, this is showing that almost 100% of dental laboratories are utilizing additive technology, and still under 20% of dental offices are utilizing it. And I think that will continue to change very rapidly. So 3D printing, there's an immense amount of research and development happening, and that's leading to, rapidly advancing resin profiles. It seems like every 6 months, new profiles are coming out that are just, really, really pushing the limits of what we thought was possible. They're great for prototypes and provisionals. That's kind of the main play of what I'm using them for, whether it's single, bridge, or full arch. But there are now a lot more resins that are available for definitive restorations. And, I would say without a doubt, 3D printing is the most important aspect of my workflow. I would say about 2.5 years ago, when I first started 3D printing, I was kind of worried, what am I going to do with this 3D printer? Is it going to have a decent ROI? Am I just going to make night guards? And now, the first thing I do when I get into the office is turn my printer on to heat up my resin. I can't think of it the last time I went a full day at work without printing. And most days the printer is just running, constantly throughout the day. In the last year or 2 years, I think we're entering what, I would call a resin revolution. And just recently, some resins have surpassed qualities of those, their milled counterparts when we're talking about long-term provisionals. And there's just such a wide variety of applications for 3D printing and resins, right? So, there's just, resins for all sorts of restorations, and, each one of them is expanding greatly. So, when we talked about before, we were saying that we don't need an impression coping, and we talked about the scanner. So how do we scan the implant? And the most important piece of that is going to be a scan body. All right, this is critical for our digital impression. It's going to replace the copings, and it's going to transfer the implant position and the hex to the CAD software. So for a Dytron implant, we're talking about a Zimmer 3.5 compatibility. On the top right over there, that's a Dytron scan body, and on the bottom, there's a whole, a bunch of them in different shapes. A lot of companies are making them, and some are better than others in different ways. So I always recommend for dentists to have multiple scan bodies for the same implant platform in different shapes and sizes. Sometimes you'll have a situation where you have a little bit deeper implant and more tissue, and it's hard to get that in there, or it's a little bit further posterior or tight space. And there are different scan bodies that I have that I feel more comfortable in different areas. And obviously it's important, especially your first many times using a scan body, to verify seating with an X-ray just as a coping, because if that's not seated, your final restoration is also not going to be seated. All right, so now you have your implant in your CAD program. All right, you have the implant position in the hex position. Okay, what are our designs? So I was under the impression there was going to be a lecture on custom abutments, but this is fine because I really wanted to focus on tie bases either way. I think you can see from the left, in my opinion, tie bases are greatly underutilized, and they have a lot of functionality, and they do allow for digital fabrication. So this is just a slide on some tie bases, right? So the main advantages we have here are cost effective, they're time efficient because they're prefabricated. You can stock them in different shapes and sizes and heights. They are available with angulated screw channels, which are showing on the right. And, so depending on the company, you can have anywhere between a 20 to a 30 degree angulation change to, improve the aesthetics on for anterior crowns and so on and so forth. We'll get into this soon, but tie bases can be used for healing abutments, which is, really a great modality. And, for engaging and non-engaging. So engaging would be for single unit crowns, and non-engaging would be, for bridges. And of course, they're, great for same day restorations, and the restoration could either be milled or printed. All right. So what are the problems with tie bases? The most common problem with tie base that I hear about and that, I've experienced is debonding for single unit and full arch. And, this is preventable. The main factors that are leading to that, we have the tie base design as well as the surface treatment. So as far as the design goes, if you see the bottom chart, right, we're comparing a 3 millimeter tall chimney that's straight with a 4.5 millimeter tall chimney that has a 5-degree taper. And the shorter straight chimney has a 68% greater bond retention. All right, so already right there with the design of the tie base, we've added a lot of retention. And surface treatment is also really important, right? So most tie bases come pretty smooth. Okay, so you can sandblast them. If you're having a lab do it, you can ask them to do some surface treatment. I prefer pre-treated ones because, anytime that I have had any debonding issue from a lab sending me a crown on a tie base, even if I've asked them to do a surface treatment, it comes out it's incredibly smooth, and clearly that was not done. And so this is a select grip. That's one from one company's pre-treated tie base, and from their research, they're showing that that's going to improve the cement retention by 500%, which is pretty incredible. The next major issue that people have with tie bases are coming down to the emergence profile. So using a tie base, I would say it could be a little bit more difficult or tricky to get a perfect emergence profile using a tie base, but any experienced CAD designer will be able to do it realistically. So on the top picture there, you're going to see, on the left side, that's what we want that crown to look like. On the right side, that's a little bit inadequate restoration. So, again, with 3D printing, if you have that one on the top right, you can put that in, let it push the tissue down a little bit, and then switch it out to the one on the left very, very easily. All right. And, the better your tissue is prepared, I think we talked a little bit about healing abutments. The better your tissue is prepared, the easier it is to capture that. Okay. So this is a really interesting program. It's called Anatomic Profile Generator. This is a free program that you can download from Baron Gruder DDS. This comes with 4 designs per quadrant. So you have molar, premolar, canine, and anterior for each quadrant. And so with this program, you download this, and you can input the library, the digital library for whatever tie base that you want, and that will put the insertion piece into it. So you can print as many of these as you want, and just keep some tie bases stocked, put it into there, and have unlimited, very nice anatomic healing abutments ready to go. So for people that don't want to play around with the software as much, they do sell for a nominal fee, pre-designed for, I think they have 2 or 3 different options. Okay. And since we're printing this, it doesn't have to be, it can be any biocompatible resin. So you can 3D print these healing abutments in a denture-based resin to have a pink shade to it, right? And, patients kind of appreciate that. Not that it really matters, but, sometimes like, oh, what's this metal thing sticking out of my gums? So that's just another option. All right. So, this is something that is pretty new, the idea of 3D printed permanent restorations. And it's something that I had been hesitant on for a long time, but I do want to take a little bit of time to talk about it. I think that the new resins that are coming out are getting there, and there's some very interesting stuff. So I want to talk about some of the benefits to using resins for definitive restorations. So first, as of January 1st last year, any resin that is over 50% nanoceramic filler is allowed to be coated as a ceramic crown. All right. So this is something that I thought was very, very interesting. The concept of shock absorption. So a natural tooth has a PDL. All right. So that PDL is able to transmit some force around the bone, whereas an implant with a traditional milled restoration, all of that force is concentrated right around the peri-implant bone. So those are a couple of studies that are showing that, the resin with its, slight give is lessening or dampening that force that's pushed around the peri-implant bone. Another really interesting concept is that, this is a review showing, a review from 2021 showing that 50% of implant crowns can develop open contacts, right? Particularly in the lower arch, on the mesial contact. So that could be a big problem if we want to maintain, proper gingival health and, patient comfort. And the nice thing with a screw retained resin crown, in under 5 minutes, you can unscrew it, bond it, put a little composite, polish it, put it back in, good as new, right? So, our ability to adjust and repair is greatly improved. I don't have time to get into every single resin. So these are 2 of my favorites for single unit restorations that these were both released within the last 6 months, maybe ceramic crown a little bit longer. So you have Sprint Race ceramic crown, and you have Rodin Sculpture 2.0. This is a 60% zirconia nanohybrid resin. And, some of their studies have shown that compared to the milled restorations, they're going to have better fit and similar flat fracture resistance to Emax and some other milled materials. So at this point in time, how do we choose, right? There's certainly benefits to milling, right? There's precision, there's quality, variety. I have an asterisk next to speed advantage because printing is getting very fast. Different printers are updating their softwares and, giving add-on build platforms that are enabling you to get restorations done quick. And especially if you're talking more than a single unit, you can, right, like I can process from start to finish full arch in 35, 40 minutes, and that's like ready to go in. So, that I think that's going to be much faster than most milling machines. But for single units, they're getting to be around the same time. The long track record, and it's still a great option. But my passion really lies with 3D printing. Since I've gotten into 3D printing, it's really changed the way that I look at patient care and my abilities to provide great options for restorations for patients, right? And save them time, lower the visits, and increase our final product. So it is more cost effective. There's a ton of applications. The technologies are advancing. And again, I have a asterisk on the study showing better accuracy versus milling because there's a lot of printers out there. Not everyone is as accurate as the next. Okay. And for me, prototyping, especially all NX cases, is a game changer. There is 3D direct 3D printing clear aligners that were released recently. From everyone I've spoke to, they're not quite there, but I think that that's going to be a major revolution in the clear aligner business once they get a little bit better. But veneers are a company out of Boston is releasing basically a feldspathic porcelain printed veneer later on this year, which is really, really interesting. Obviously, there's guides. I don't use them for that, but that's a very common use for printing. And then so on and so forth. There's just a ton of options, and production time, material limitations, asterisk, because that's quickly disappearing. All right. So this is just some pictures of some of the prototypes, right? So when I tell you like the provisional, the same day provisional is going to be the day of surgery, and I call the prototypes more when I'm going for my final option. Okay. And so it's just really, really an amazing situation. About 18 months ago when we were getting into this, some of the doctors and more experienced are saying you can't do it with resin. You have to do milled restorations. It's not adequate. And in the last few months with the new resins geared towards full arch, it is better, in my opinion, and the research will show better than most milled materials out there. Very aesthetic. Yeah, very low water absorption, so minimal color change, and so on and so forth. All right, so this is Rodent Titan, was released recently. This is one of my favorite, I would say it's my favorite resin for full arch prototyping. So this is research that was done third party from Boston University, and it's showing it has low flexural modulus, which gives it a little bit of flexibility, which is great for full arch because it's going to minimize breaking. And then on the bottom, you're going to see how high the fracture toughness is. And if you look over there, the fracture toughness of Rodent Titan is significantly higher than Emax. All right. And this is another one that was really surprising to me. So this is comparing the wear rate of materials from the milled materials on the right-hand side to printed materials on the left-hand side. And printed materials are showing a significantly less wear rate from compared to iVotion, which is one of the most common pucks, and Shofu HC. So Onyx Tough 2, this is another great resin. This was released, this is sprint race version. It was released around the same time as Rodent. This is actually the only resin that's FDA cleared as a permanent restoration for full arch. I don't quite think that at the moment it is strong enough to leave in for years and years. But technically, if you're delivering an arch that's a temporary arch with this, technically you have given a definitive restoration. But I think that down the road with some type of trial or metal substructure, we will be able to have arches printed with some resin. Okay, but again, you see like this is another we're significantly stronger than the milled PMMA. And I've used Onyx Tough a few times, and it really is amazing resin. So I just want to glance over some of the futures of 3D printing. later on this month at Lab Day Chicago, Bigo is another major resin company. They're releasing their first resin that's FDA approved for multi-unit restorations, so 3-unit bridges. So we're going to be beyond just single-unit definitive crowns. This is a really interesting printer. This is a little bit different than the traditional resin printers we've been talking about. This was released in Germany last year. This is printing Emacs, okay? And this printer also has the ability to print zirconia. So I'm hopeful that within a short time frame, we will be able to have better access to these in the dental offices. Metal printing, which is something that is really stoked my interest in the last few months. It's been around for a long time, but its application in dentistry is really starting to explode now. I was at the Lab Day last year. I didn't see anybody talking about it. This year, there are 10 stations of companies talking about their metal printing. So, I foresee a future where we'll be able to metal print, chromium, cobalt, or titanium thimble bar with a resin superstructure on top of that. At least if you say you have a maxillary zirconia arch with this as the mandible, so you prevent clanking, and have a really nice, either a great long-term provisional without worry of breakage, or even a final restoration, definitive restoration. So we have, obviously a lot of stuff in craniofacial reconstruction. So they're now printing out of hydroxyapatite or I'm getting waved down. So this is my last slide. 3D printing is exploding. There's a ton of information out there. I hope it's, I know a lot of people are a little scared to get into 3D printing because maybe a little bit of a learning curve, but now is a great time. It's certainly not going anywhere, and it will really improve your ability to treat patients. So thank you so much for listening. And if you have any questions, let me know.